A couple of weeks ago, my wife took my daughter to the doctor. She had a little lump on her leg. And the doctor said, well, we'll keep an eye on it, and if it gets bigger, we'll have an ultrasound to see what it is. Well, it got bigger, and my wife took her back in, and the doctor said, well, go downstairs, get an ultrasound done. My wife went downstairs, and they weren't there. So she went back to the doctor, and the doctor said, well, go to this other place and get it done there. She went to this other place, and they said, well, we're booked. You can't do it today. So my wife called the doctor again and said, what do I do? The doctor said, well, go to the hospital you work at and have them do it. So she went there, and about 2.5 hours later, they finally did it. And she's calling me and keeping me updated with her frustrations, and I'm not too happy about it. And so 2.5 hours later, after she's got it done, she says, well, what is it? And the technician says, well, I can't tell you. What is it, a secret? You can tell me. No, legally I can't tell you. Legal schmeagle, that's my little girl. What's wrong with it? I can't tell you. You'll have to talk to your doctor. So she called me, and I wasn't happy. And where I work in a little cubicle, and there's a couple other guys that I work where they can hear me on the phone, and I can hear them when they talk on the phone. And, my mom called, and I wasn't too happy, and I broke down and cried. And my wife called me and said, you need to call the doctor and see if he will call them and get a preliminary report, so at least we can find out. So I did, and the doctor ended up calling my wife later as I was driving home and said, it's no big deal. My wife knows what it is, and I don't remember what it's called, but it wasn't a big deal, and that's all I cared about. So, the next day I go back to work, and the guy that is in the desk next to me said, man, are you all right? Is your daughter okay? And I said, yeah, everything turned out. It was bad there, but it could always be worse. I said, man, the way you sounded yesterday, I didn't think it was going to get much worse. I said, dude, it could always be worse. No matter what happened, it could always be worse. He said, if your little girl died, it could be worse. I go, of course it could. He goes, what do you mean? I said, well, my wife could have called me yesterday and said it was cancer, and they were going to have to take her leg. And then on the way home, she could have got in a car wreck, and both her and my little boy could have died. And then they could have called me and told me, and on my way home, I could have been in a car wreck and been a paraplegic. And then I'd be a burden on the rest of my family to the point where they had no money. They had to put me in a home, and then the place catches on fire, and I'm a paraplegic, so I can't get out of bed. I said, even if that was the worst that would happen, I said it could always be worse than that. Then I really had him going then. How could it be worse than that? And I said, well, about 2,000 years ago, it could be worse because some women who were going to a tomb that was inhabited by the body of a man who was unjustly killed could have found that tomb with the door shut. It could be worse because they could not have seen two men standing in shining clothes asking them a question that, when I read it now, it's almost, I got to hear the bewilderment in the angels' voices of, what? Almost like, why are you here? Why are you seeking a fish in the middle of a desert? Why are you seeking the living among the dead? It could be worse because that tomb could have stayed shut and the body of Jesus could have been in there. It could be worse because Jesus could have never been risen and never given me the opportunity to be in heaven when I leave this life. And that can come at any time. I heard on TV today that a guy named Reggie White died. Reggie White played football for years and years, and I think he was a Baptist minister, I'm not sure. On the off season he did a lot of preaching. He was 45 years old. He had a heart attack and died last week. So it can come at any time. But no matter what happens in my life, I'm telling this guy, it doesn't matter what I lose or what's taken from me or anything of that nature, nothing ever will be so bad as not having that promise fulfilled when I get called home.